Good morning everybody, and welcome to day 35 of my 90-day vlog challenge. We're churning through the days. I'm sitting outside. The weather's getting a little bit less winterish and a little more spring-like. It's actually quite a beautiful day. Today I wanted to chat about exam stress. I've been observing, I don't know if you follow the Reach Out Facebook page, but I've been observing the posts that they've been putting up on Facebook lately, all about exam stress and reminding students that your exams do not define who you are. And the stress that students find themselves under is it's short-term stress, it's intense stress, and it can be quite debilitating if it's allowed to get out of hand. So I thought I'd chat a little bit today about that and talk a little bit about my journey to becoming a psychologist, because I have over the years I've worked with quite a number of year 11 and 12 students who found themselves quite debilitated by the stress they've been experiencing. So their study has reached a point where they're having panic attacks and things like that. Often perfectionism can be an element at play there, where students are feeling that they just can never get their marks high enough or their work good enough. And perfectionism is quite debilitating at its worst, because it can lead to self-sabotage, unintentional self-sabotage, where the work is viewed as not being good enough, so it's either handed in late or not handed in at all. So of course that's quite self-defeating for a student who wants to do really well. So thinking about exam stress, and the students that I've worked with over the years, I've often talked to them about that transient nature of the period of intense stress that they find themselves in, that it will pass, of course, because exams will come to an end whether they do well or not. Good morning, Emily. I see you've joined me. Hi. So for a lot of the students that I talk to, they might be students who have expectations placed on them. And I say expectations because the students that I've talked to, quite often it's ended up not being their aspiration, but rather because they've been doing really well at school, they've found themselves in a position where everybody expects that they're going to do medicine or law or something like that. And of course they're finding themselves under a lot of pressure to continue to do really well and to get marks high enough to get into medicine or law at university, but that's actually not what they're passionate about. So it's quite a tricky place to find yourself in the midst of that year 11 and 12 stress, when you're feeling yourself funneled into an area that's actually not your passion. So when I'm talking to students who have not been doing so well, so the flip side is students who've not been doing as well as they'd hoped, but they do want to get into medicine or they do want to do law, and they're panicking because their marks are not high enough. I've talked to them quite a bit about my journey to becoming a psychologist. Not that I tend to overly share in therapy sessions, but sometimes it does help, I think, when students are in that place where they feel they're the only one experiencing what they're experiencing, and that if they don't get these incredibly high results at year 11 and 12, then they are doomed to failure forever. Pardon me, I have a frog in my throat. Best fix that with coffee. So I was one of those kids that moved around a lot. I had a lot going on in my childhood, and obviously the benefit of that is I now have friends from various schools around the country that I am still friends with. Because I moved around quite a bit, there wasn't a real sense of consistency in the subjects that I was studying, and I tried to maintain a line of consistency in subject choices. So my key interests when I was at high school were languages. I studied Japanese and French, and acting. So I didn't study drama at school, but I was in the school plays and in talent shows and things like that. And art. So I studied as many creative arts subjects as I could. So when I got to year 11 and 12, I found myself in a private school in Melbourne. Big shout out to Methodist Ladies College. And that was a fantastic experience for me on a lot of levels. I'd never been to a private school before. But it coincided with a very stressful time in my family life, and my stress levels got quite out of control. Now, for me, stress often manifests physically, so I became quite debilitated with back pain, and there were all sorts of things going on. Long story, not very interesting. The bottom line is, by the time I was about halfway through year 12, I had dropped all of my maths and science subjects, really regretting that now, however, another story. Dropped all my maths and science subjects in favour of my creative art choices and my languages. And of course, having 2 languages up my sleeve, that was enough for enough pre-tertiaries to get me on the right track for university later. With the back troubles I had in year 12, I missed swathes of school. So of course that added to the pressure and the stress, and in the end I had to make the difficult choice, either drop out of the language subjects that I was doing or repeat year 12. By that stage I had actually decided I was going to be an art teacher. So all of my energies were going into my creative studies and my creative output, and I was on a track to go to art school and become an art teacher. So for me it didn't seem too difficult a choice. I just gave up Japanese. I'd already given up French at the end of year 11, and I spent the rest of year 12 acting in school plays, going to graphic design classes and raiding the art storeroom. And it was a great year 12. I had a fantastic time. At the end of that process though, I had no pre-tertiaries. So back in those days, so we were just out of the Ice Age, the RMIT was not a university, so it was a technical college, and I was accepted into RMIT to study art teaching. But I decided to take a year because year 12 had been so stressful, and many kids do need that break from school after year 12. So I took a year off and concentrated on my acting and my painting and had a lot of fun, and didn't go to uni. Didn't go to RMIT, gave up the idea of art teaching, and wasn't sure what I wanted to do. So I spent quite a number of years then just pursuing things that interested me and working in different roles and learning a lot about life. And by the time I was in my mid-20s, I'd ironed out all those creases in my educational journey. I had pulled together some interests that I couldn't shake, that were nothing to do with art. And I decided that it was time to go and study, and at that stage I was fascinated with criminology, and living in Melbourne but from Tassie originally, and we decided, my husband and I decided, we would come to Tasmania to study. We would both go to university as mature age students, and that's what we did. So by that stage, criminology being my interest area, and I had it all sorted out and made the decision to move to Tasmania, and realised they didn't offer criminology at that time. So then I was faced with another choice, and I sat, and in those days the university had a course, a unit guide or a unit outline book that was the size of a phone book really, and sat on the floor of my lounge room going through that, making my subject choices, and I was tossing up between law and psychology, and in the end obviously psychology won. So for a lot of people to see that, you know, I've got a successful and busy psychology practice, and we've got locations around Tasmania fairly well covered, I'm out there on social media promoting what psychologists do, a lot of people might assume that, you know, I flew through school and went straight to uni and got right on the career track, but of course that's not what happened at all. It took me quite a long time to figure out where I was heading in life, and it took me a bit of time also to get over that stressful period of year 12. Of course I had, you know, double whammy of year 12 plus stress in the background at home. So back to you. If you guys are really struggling with year 12 or year 11 or university, keep in mind that those results aren't going to be the be all and end all of your future. You might feel like it now. You might feel that if you don't get into medicine next year, your life is over. Or you might feel that if you don't get into law next year, your family's going to be really disappointed. Or you might feel that if you don't pass this round of exams at uni, that you're going to have to, it's all over. Nothing's all over until it's all over. There's always another option. If you search on YouTube for some TED Talks on failure, you'll find some incredible stories of people in successful and powerful positions who use failure as a platform for their next level of growth. And so when I look back, I didn't know I was doing this at the time, but when I look back on the choices I made in year 12 that precluded me from going to university, that set me on a path of a fascinating journey, and I learnt so much, and I made so many amazing friends that I still have today. And of course my kids are interested in creative pursuits. Of course they are. That's part of who I still am, and it's lovely to see that coming out in them. And of course I encourage them to just do what they're passionate about. So when you're studying and you're worried about your future and you're worried about where it's all going to end up, life's a great big mystery sometimes, and I know that's a cliche, but try to remember that this exam period that you might be facing is just that. It's one exam period in your life, and life's got many, many elements to it. So I hope that the story of the journey that I took to becoming a psychologist, I have a PhD now in clinical psychology because I was so passionate about about the path I eventually found myself on, and I wanted to keep going. And I mentor junior psychologists now because I'm so passionate about the work that we do. I wouldn't have had any hope of being that passionate about art teaching because in hindsight it was something that I thought was going to be my future, but obviously it wasn't. So, I think it's really important for students to be allowed the freedom to make choices that are perhaps risky, or to be allowed to fail and the sky not fall in around them. And for those students not doing absolutely well at year 11 and 12, I wish all the grown-ups around you will just remind you there are other pathways to study, and it might not be that now's the time for you to go to university. It might be that there are other adventures you need to pursue, and then once you do know what your future path is going to look like and what study needs you have, it might not even be university that you need. So allow yourself some freedom to think about this as a short-term pain. Okay, these exams that you're facing are a short-term pain, and if you don't do brilliantly at them, it's not the end of the world. So, keeping in mind stress management skills. So look back on some of my other videos, you can find them on YouTube, around anxiety management. The strategies in those videos will help you with your stress. That's number one. Number two, talk to somebody. If you're not coping with your exams or your study pressures or the expectations that others have of you, talk to somebody. Talk to someone at school, talk to someone at uni. The unis always have counsellors or a psychology clinic or something like that to help you out. Talk to your GP and get a referral to see a psychologist or a social worker if you want to take it outside of the study realm. But talk to somebody, talk to a friend, talk to your parents. I think you'll find most parents would rather know that you're happy than know that they've accidentally shoehorned you into something that's making you miserable. If that's your study choices and if that's your future planning, if you're doing that to please others, just stop and have a little think about whether that's what you're really, really wanting. And if it's not, have an honest chat with those who love and care for you. See what choices come out of that. Finally, just make sure you're looking after yourself. Get as much sleep as you can. Eat healthily, get a little bit of exercise just to clear the cobwebs out of your brain. Try and keep an orderly study station so that you know where everything is that you need, and schedule your time so that you know what time you've got available for studying for each of the exams that you've got coming up. So that's it for me today, day 35. I hope that you found my story of how I came to be a psychologist at least normalising for those of you that are having a different journey to study or a difficult journey through study. Let me know in the comments. I'd love to know how you're going with your studies. I'd love to know what you're studying and how you're finding it. I'd love to know, you know, how you're coping. What are you doing to cope with your exams and your study pressures? Huge shout out to our Cleo, who is on our admin team in Hobart. She is in my mind every day at the moment because she's also studying psychology and she's got a lot of assignments on her plate at the moment. So we're all wishing Cleo the absolute best with her studies, and excited to see her just plug away at those and also be an awesome member of our admin team. On that happy note, I will let you go for the day. I hope you're having a fantastic Friday, and I look forward to talking to you all again tomorrow. Thanks a lot, and bye-bye.